noise!
Hello and welcome to another edition of Truth and Rhythm. Brought to you by funkandstuff.net, this is the interview show that gets deep in the pocket with contemporary music's foremost masters of the groove. I am your host, Scott Dr. GX Goldfine, musicologist, creative arts journalist, and multimedia pro. Whether you're watching the video version of this show or the audio-only podcast version, I thank you so much for your continued interest and support in this show. If you enjoy this programming, there are several ways to help support Truth and Rhythm, as well as contribute to further enhancements and expansion, plus get some sweet perks and rewards in the process. First, subscribe to the Funk and Stuff channel on YouTube, which is where Truth and Rhythm lives, and be an advocate by spreading the word among fellow funk, jazz, and R&B music lovers. Second, join Truth and Rhythm's new membership program through Patreon, which features 3 tiers for truth believers, truth seekers, and truth crusaders. You can also submit a direct donation to the cause anytime at funkandstuff.net. At that site, which is loaded with awesome content, you can also purchase the book Everything's on the One, The First Guide of Funk. Shop for official Truth and Rhythm and Funk and Stuff merchandise, and use the Amazon links for all of your online purchases, which allocates a percentage to this show. Sponsorship opportunities are available as well. Contact me directly at scottg@funkandstuff.net. For those of you who go the extra step in supporting the show, you have my heartfelt gratitude for allowing us to continue to shine the light on those special artists whose quest is to find truth in rhythm.
I am pleased to welcome to the Truth and Rhythm Mothership, Alvin Taylor, a renowned drummer who since the 1970s has worked with dozens of top rock, R&B, and funk artists. Those collaborations include Eric Burdon, George Harrison, Sly Stone, Billy Preston, Bill Withers, Gil Scott-Heron, Elton John, Natalie Cole, and America. As a teen, he was a member of Little Richard's band and shared the stage with legends like Jimi Hendrix and Elvis Presley. Alvin, thank you for joining me. How are you?
I'm doing real well, Scott. Thank you for asking. How about you?
I'm doing well as well. So thank you. And thank you for joining the show. Much appreciated.
So happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
You're coming to us from where today, Alvin?
From Palm Springs, California. My home where I was born and raised.
Well, the desert, for those that don't know, it's about 2 hours or so outside Los Angeles, and a very nice area.
Yeah, I have a lot of desert cities in the desert area here, including Cathedral City, Rancho Mirage, Palm Desert, Palm Springs, Indio. It's a great, it's where it's known as the Coachella Valley, the area that's known as the Coachella Fest, known for Coachella Fest.
Yeah. I never got out to that, regretfully, but, I grew up in Los Angeles and I spent many a spring break in Palm Springs as a teenager and through college. So those were good times.
Mm-hmm.
Wild times. It's sort of like in the Florida, they have the, what area is that in Florida? It's famous for spring break. I don't even know because I'm from the West Coast, but yeah.
I think it's Palmdale. I mean, Palm Beach, Florida. I don't know.
Yeah, something like that. In any case, great to join the show and looking forward to getting into talking about drumming and some of these great artists that you've worked with. So, Alvin, how did you first get drawn to drums? And did you have formal training, or you just kind of fell into it, or what happened?
Well, no formal training whatsoever. It's just all heart and soul, and what I call growing up as a young boy, what we call controlled by the Holy Spirit. And it's just in church, basically. That's where I got my start. I recall Sunday mornings being, my mom worked all through the week as a maid, and it's all dressed up with a white uniform. But on Sunday morning, it was the best dress and perfume all around the house, and and off we would go with a suit on to church, and we sit there. And what I really liked about the church, which was different and a little unusual, different from other churches, was that they had instruments. They had guitar player and like bass player. Like, whoa, this is pretty powerful. One guy, he played spoons and tambourine. I thought that was pretty unique. He had played, and the strummer was pretty nice. I used to hear him and kind of like the sound of the drums. And the church that I was basically attending was known as a holy roller church, for lack of another word, but it was known as the Pentecostal movement. And people would get all excited and jump up and dance and shout and hallelujah and scream and yell and roll over on the floor. And so the band, one morning, got to going. Boy, I tell you, the drummer got up and he was like, exit stage left. He's on one foot, talking about the moonwalk. Boy, this guy's on one foot moonwalking. And as he's like moving off the drums, I'm thinking, shouldn't the beat continue? It's like, I'm 8 years old. I'm like, of course I had thought about drums and I had heard them before, and I'll tell you more about that later. But I thought, wow, this is my opportunity. And so the drummer got up and went down the aisle, floating down the aisle, and there I get on the drum and I start playing. And the next thing I know, after church, when everybody gathers together, the ladies are talking. My mom and said, "Oh, Miss Eula," my mom is Eula Taylor. "Miss Eula, that boy sure know how to play them drums. Oh, you ought to get him a drum set." And my mom's like, "Why don't I get your son a drum set?" Yeah. So anyway, it's just next thing I know, I ended up playing drums. The other thing was, that was the basic concept and idea from where I got my idea about playing drums. The other one was we had two parades in Palm Springs during any given year. Every year annually, we'd have the Desert Circus Parade and the Palm Springs Rodeo Parade. And before each one of these events started, they would have a parade, the Desert Circus and the rodeo. And so I remember sitting, waiting for the parade to get started, and I'd hear this thunderous roar sound way in the background. Sound like an engine trying to get started, It's just, and it's like, man, I heard them a mile away before. It seemed like by the time they got up on me, the closer they got to me, the closer they would get, the more my shirt would start pounding, beating. My heart was just like beating with every beat of the drum. And I was excited about it. And they get up on me, and this drum major with this tall hat and a baton that he's twirling, and the whistle's blowing, calling the formations. I was like, oh my goodness. And then I'd see this row of drums, and they would like, boom, 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 boom. Oh man, yeah, they would pass right by me. I'm like, yes, I know. That's exactly what I want to do for the rest of my life. I want to be a drummer, So that's there you are. That's what happened.
Wow, that makes quite an impression on a young man.
Yeah.
I remember hearing those marching bands when I was growing up, hearing like the USC marching band and
Yeah.
those kind of bands, and yeah, really felt deep in your insides. It just occurred to me while you were talking. I remember that Florida spring break location, Fort Lauderdale.
Fort Lauderdale. Yeah.
Yeah. So Palm Springs and Fort Lauderdale. So Alvin, you got the bug. You got the drums in you. At what point, I know you started playing with folks pretty young, when you're a teenager. So at what point did you sort of get your first break in terms of, playing out in front of people and the road that led you to playing with Little Richard?
Well, there was a guy by the name of Bill Oakes, and he was a songwriter. He wrote great songs and wanted to start a band called the American Eagle Blues Band. And I became the first drummer with that band. And we would just do high school sock hops, and so they were called at that time. We do a few gigs locally around town. The band became pretty famous and powerful. And I remember during the summer I wanted to get a job. I got a job at the car wash and didn't like the car wash too much. It was they had me in a position which is called the duck position. I guess the reason is apropos because you get wet, and I mean, literally as wet as a duck in the positions that I was in, because you had the mitts and you have to wash the car and from each side, and then it would go to another rinsing stage. But we had these big mitts that we'd wash the car down and literally get wet because we duck these mitts in the car. I mean,
wasn't that a benefit if you were in the hot desert?
Well, actually, I'm glad that you brought that about, because it was fun in that regard. But the soap was really, it was kind of like some lye. I mean, this stuff was really, I mean, you would get this stuff on the palm of your hands and I forget what you call this part, the wrist. You get soap around there, and it would really hurt, and you'd have to get kind of calamine lotion and stuff like that to put on to soothe your arms. But anyway, I didn't like that too much, so I decided to become a busboy. Well, actually, I started working as a dishwasher first at the Biltmore Hotel. And the Biltmore Hotel in Palm Springs is a pretty powerful place. Any given night, you're liable to run into someone like Lucille Ball, or Joy Bishop, and various different famous actress and actors that would come in there.
Bob Hope, maybe.
Yeah, sure. And there was a band called the Soul Patrol that played there, and the drummer would get totally inebriated and couldn't do the set. He would sit out, and the music would go on, and I would think, wow, well, if the music's going on, shouldn't the beat go on just like in church? And so I told the guy Arky, I remember his name, the guitarist. I don't know what his real name was, Arky, but I do remember the drummer's name was Ernie Hernandez at that time. So anyway, I asked Arky, he'd be interested in knowing that I was a drummer and that I could play, with him. And he was like, you're the bus boy. And I said, but I can really play. He says, okay. He says, well, finally, after me telling him a few times, he decided, you know what, why don't you come on a Saturday and let me see what you can do. The drummer's not going to be around, and his drum set's here. he'll never know you played on his drum set, unless you don't take care of it or whatever. So I remember the one Saturday morning showing up and actually auditioning for Archie, and he was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe that this kid's, 13 years old, amazing drummer. And was just getting ready to turn 14. Excuse me. At the time, I was just getting ready to turn 14. I was about 13, and as they would say, 13 and a half, So the leader of the band, Archie, asked the owner of the hotel if I could sit in with the band if the drummer wasn't okay to work, And I think the owner knew that the drummer would get inebriated. It's like, okay, well, you know what? As long as his tables are bust and everything's clear, I don't mind. Yeah, just make sure his tables are clean. Don't have him up there on the stage and there's a bunch of dishes waiting on the table. I want my tables ready. So the owner consented to do so. And one night the drummer got drunk and he sat out. I sat in. In walked Sammy Davis Jr., Little Richard, Billy Preston, and Frank Sinatra. All at the same time. Little Richard, Sammy Davis Jr., Billy Preston, Sammy Davis Jr., Frank Sinatra. They all grabbed the table.
Billy Preston was with Sammy Davis and Frank Sinatra?
Yes, he was. And Little Richard was also with them. And, oh, yeah. I couldn't imagine this as like kind of an unusual bunch, But what was actually happening back in the day, Frank Sinatra acquired a record label called Reprise Records, which was distributed by Warner Brothers. And Frank Sinatra had just signed Little Richard to his label. And so Richard was the newest artist on Frank's. And so Frank had invited him out to his home in Palm Springs and, to celebrate and have a party. And so next thing I know, they brought this party into the Biltmore Hotel where I was working as a busboy. I didn't know that at that time. I found out later on when a news reporter was asking me the same question, how he got started. He was like, yeah, Frank Sinatra, he really didn't believe me. So, but he went and researched it and found out. And that's how I actually found out that, because I didn't even think about it, but I did know Richard was on Reprise Records. I just had no idea that Reprise Records was owned by Frank Sinatra. And anyway, so I didn't know who Little Richard and I didn't know who Billy Preston was. I knew who Frank Sinatra was. I knew who Sammy Davis Jr. were. And when I was playing drums, they were like, man, look at that hole. They were like pointing at each other and it was like laughing and pointing the finger at me. And then later on, I found out that they were saying, hey, Richard was talking about he needed a drummer to get his thing going. And I just happened to be the guy who was there that they had their eyes on. I thought, okay, hey.
What year about would you say that was?
Oh, I was 14, so that would have been about 68, 70, 69, maybe. 68, I think. The next thing I know is everybody's going nuts in the restaurant. Richard's coming back in the kitchen while I'm putting dishes away. He said, "Woo, honey." He said, honey, I ain't seen a drummer like that since I left Macon, Georgia. He said, when I saw you play them drums, he said, my big toe just shot straight up in my boots. He said, I wanted to scream like a white lady. He said, I got so excited about you playing them drums. He said, and would you be my drummer? And I'm like, I'm looking at Richard, and I didn't know who the heck he is. That actually to be quite honest with you, I was a little scared. I was afraid because he was this guy with his headdress on with all these feathers, and I'm thinking, we got the Agua Caliente band of Indians, and we got all these, different bands, band of Cahuilla Indians, and I thought maybe he's an Indian chief asking me to be a part of the band. I don't know, But then later on, he asked me my mom's phone number, and I gave him the number. And when I got home, I said, "Hey, I met this guy named Little Richard." And my mom said, "Little Richard?" He says, "Good golly, Miss Molly, tutti frutti, Jenny, good Lucille." She goes, "Oh, I know Little Richard." And he goes, "He's very famous." And I said, "Yeah, he wants me to be in his band." My mom said, "Get out of here, kid. Come on with this." And so sure enough, Richard gives a call to my mom, and my mom's like, "Oh, under no circumstances at all, period." Of course, Richard, not wanting to be outdone, had his manager, Bumps Blackwell, to call my mom, with the name Bumps. "Hey, I'm going to bump you off, Bumps." So, but anyway, Bumps Blackwell called and asked my mom, "Hey, what's your, concern? I want to, understand." And my mom was like, "Hey, hasn't even finished high school yet. The kid's still in school, And so Richard was, Bumps Blackwell was saying, "Hey, I'll make sure that he, has a tutor on the road with him. He'll fly first class with Richard. He won't be on the bus with the other band members who could be an influence of a different type of lifestyle that we don't want him involved in. And he's going to be getting this amount of dollars, And my mom, I think she's at that point said, "Wait a minute. My, see here, what's the mortgage? The mortgage payment. When do I help him pack?" So the next thing I know, I'm on the road. Big limousine pulls up, picks me up in Palm Springs, and I end up in Hollywood at the Carolina Pine Hotel on La Brea, 1410 North La Brea, right across from. They had these girls on roller skates. I can't remember the name of the place now, but it was really a neat place where they would roll up on roller skates and they would feed you. And so I ended up at the International Hotel in Las Vegas, opening up the show for Elvis Presley in Little Richard's band at the age of 14. And Jimi Hendrix was playing guitar. Billy Preston was playing keyboards, playing organ, and Little Richard was playing the piano and singing. And all that I remember is that Richard would take these things called a hiatus. And Richard said, "Oh, honey, I'm going on a hiatus." I was like, "A hyena? What's a hyena?" I would ask Billy, "What's a hyena?" He said, "A hyena." He said, "No, a hiatus." He says, "What that means is we're going to be out of work." He said, "It's a hiatus for Richard." He says, "Yeah, but for us, it means we're out of work." He said, "But don't worry." He says, "If you want to play, I got this friend named Tony Jones over at Motown, and he'll hook us up with all of the producers. And there's a guy by the name of Benjamin Barrett, who's a contractor. We'll get him to contract dates for us, and we'll never be out of work." He said, "But, if you, want to sit around and wait for Richard's hiatus," he says, "you're not going to make a living." And he said, "I got to make a living. I got, bills to pay and stuff like that." So Billy Preston was the one that introduced me to the session industry, and we were playing with various different artists from, Rick James, the Temptations, Supremes, and you name it. We're working with everybody all over the place all the time. Never a dull moment working in the studio.
Well, hold on. So how did you learn the material?
Well, it's just it wasn't really anything to learn. Really, they had these charts and the charts spoke for themselves. So the piano player would get a chart, and he would give me the same chart that he had. And the charts at the time, I had no idea how to read, but all that I had to do was just follow the chart. And they would teach me, hey, this means a repeat, and you go back. And so when he was playing the chart, I was listening. He'd play the song down. I go, okay, I can do that, no problem. So I ended up just playing. And over the years, like you would see a dotted half note or a dotted quarter note, you begin to learn the value of those notes after repeating it. And if you see a ba-ba-da-ba, ba-ba-da-ba, ba-ba-da, if you see that and you're playing that, then wherever you see it again, you're like, oh, I know what that is. That's ba-ba-da-ba, ba-ba-da-ba, ba-ba-da-ba. No matter how they're going to play it, what note they're going to play it in, that's what the rhythm is. So I learned the sticking rhythm. I mean, I probably didn't learn left, right, left, right, right, left, right, left, but I learned what the beat was. And so I was able to play. I played everything by ear. Anything that I heard, I could play it. And even if it didn't have a beat to it, I could put a beat to it.
So you ended up just playing just the one show with Little Richard, or were there several shows? Or
oh no, we were there at the International Hotel for about a good month, and then we would come back and do 2 months, and so that wasn't the only show. We played the King's Castle and Lake Tahoe, several other shows. Actual concerts.
Who were some of the drummers that maybe were mentors to you, and also that you really emulated or idolized?
I really didn't idolize anybody, because growing up, the only God in my life was the God of my Savior, and so I didn't really idolize any. I had a great admiration for several different drummers. Like there's a guy by the name of Michael Beard, known as Pooh Bear. We call him Pooh Bear. I don't know if you ever heard of him before.
The only Michael Beard I know is, I think that was the name of the drummer for the Barkays at one time.
Yeah, this is Michael Beard with Elvis Presley.
Okay.
And Michael Beard, and then there was another drummer with him. Sometimes they would use 2 drummers at the same time. A guy by the name of Ron Tutt. I don't know if you know of Ronnie Tutt, but we just know him as Ron Tutt. These are 2 names you might want to look up: Ron Tutt and Michael Beard, Beard. And they were 2 of the most amazing drummers I'd ever seen in my life. And I saw them firsthand with Elvis Presley. I would watch their show every night. And it's funny because, I would look back behind me in the curtain, and I'd see Elvis Presley with Michael Beard and Ron Tutt sitting there pointing at me too. They were like, "Hey," and so I thought, "Hey, I'm kind of a big deal." I got Elvis Presley behind the curtain with his 2 drummers saying, "Hey, this is what I want you to play like," or "Check this little drummer out." And so, I thought likewise, and if not more, the same with them when I saw these guys play. They were the bomb, and I really liked them. And so then I started listening to, we had Jimi Hendrix playing guitar in our band. And Jimi wasn't an actual member. He was just Billy would call him a guest, and Jimi Hendrix had become pretty famous from England, a band called the Jimi Hendrix Experience. And he had his own drummer, and this drummer, Mitch Mitchell, I liked his drummer too. It kind of gave me a different perspective on the fusion kind of jazz rock type of guy. And so I learned a lot of stuff listening to him. And of course, at the time, John Bonham, Led Zeppelin. But then the studio killer, the guy that was a main crusher, was a guy by the name of Pretty Purdy, Bernard Purdy. And Bernard Purdy, boy, that guy could really play some drums. He was something. And he was a major influence as well. So, and I didn't care too much for, and I like all types and kinds of drummers, but I wasn't really too much into the technical stuff. I liked Buddy Rich, but it wasn't a major influence for me. I like some of the drummers in that era, but but I would like more. Trying to think of the guy here, his Buddy Rich's rival.
Max Roach?
No. Oh boy. I'm losing it here. I can't believe I can't think of one of the most famous drummers in the world.
Gene Krupa?
Gene Krupa. Yeah, Gene, baby. Gene Krupa. I would love to be able to play drums like Gene Krupa. That guy was really hot. And so that was one of my favorite drummers of all time. Yeah, Buddy was more technical. Buddy was kind of unbelievable to the degree that, okay, I'll never be able to play that, so let's move on. Next. Okay, so I'd see Gene do some things that were more palatable, and I think, okay, well, maybe someday I might be able to do that. But this thing here, the one-hand roll, forget it. I'm not going to be able to do that ever, and I'm not even going to try. So some of the things that Buddy Rich did is like, I'm never going to try it. And, for what reason do I need to? Let him do that. That's what he does. So let me just focus on what I can do best.
So at what point did you kind of get out on your own? You were continuing to get tutored, I assume, for a while. And, at some point you got to 18 or whatever. And, how did that progress?
Well, I think it was 17. I was with a band called Pacific Gas and Electric. PG&E, we had a hit record called Are You Ready? Are you ready to sit right down? Are you ready not to be alone? Someone's coming to carry you home. And if you're ready, then carry on. Are you ready? Anyway.
That's their biggest hit, I think.
Yeah, that's only hit. So, basically, I kind of learned what it was like to be around and the drug scene. Everybody was smoking marijuana, and some of the guys in the band were doing a little heavier stuff like heroin, and I was totally afraid of needles and was never going to do anything like that. So, but I was around it, but I grew up on the rock scene, in the rock scene, being in Pacific Gas and Electric. We were opening up the show for a lot of people. And when we had that one hit record, we had groups like the Jefferson Airplane opening up the show for us. And we were doing gigs. I remember once, at the I think it was the Cow Palace in San Francisco, at the Jefferson Airplane, and the opening act was Fleetwood Mac. Fleetwood Mac. Then there was the Jefferson Airplane, and then Pacific Gas Electric. We were a big deal. We had that one record. It's really funny because the drummer, Joey Covington, and I became very good friends. And the reason I like Joey is because all these other guys that we opened up the show for, it was because of their drummer that I didn't get a chance to have a sound check. And it was like, what's this, a power play that they won't allow me to have a sound check? But my drums have to be set up in the front of these guys. And, anyway, it was just weird. They wouldn't allow me to have a sound check. But every time I'd run into Joey, he was like, hey, you want to get your drums sounded? It's like, and people were looking at Joey like he was crazy. Yeah, let the guy let him have his sound check, man, And so, wow. And so I thought that was pretty cool. And when we had our hit record and Joey and their band was there, I was like, hey, let Joey have his sound check, So we became really kind of like, no matter how famous we are, we have a hit record, you're still just as good as we are. And we're going to respect you just like you respect us. Give you your sound check. And when Joey got killed here in Palm Springs in a car crash, I put together this amazing homegoing service for him, which was a Joey Covington tribute concert where I invited, Grace Slick, Moby Grape, and all of these people, various different groups from the Bay Area came and
what year was that?
2014 or 15, I want to say. Yeah. And his wife, Lauren Taines, and I became very good friends. As a matter of fact, she became my manager. And because, of course, I called her and asked her if it was okay that I would do it. And I did it with a friend of mine, David Ross, here in Palm Springs in the desert. We promoted the Joey Covington concert. I put together all the groups and called everybody and organized it. And David arranged to get the tickets together and do all the administrative stuff. And he's a force to reckon with here in the desert as a promoter. So I love my friend David Ross.
Going back to I think it was 1970 when Are You Ready was a hit. How did you feel hearing your playing on the radio for the first time?
Well, it was kind of scary because I'd have to look at my hands when I'm listening to me on the radio and say, hey, my hands seem like that's me. Did they have to take my hands off to put it on the radio while I'm, and I said, let me make sure I still got my hands here, It was very unique riding around in a car or being next to a radio and knowing that my hands were the hands that you were hearing on the drums for that particular song. And it's just very awkward feeling because it's like, am I here or am I coming out of that speaker right now? So I could never quite figure it out until I got smart enough to realize, okay, it's just a recording. and so I can be in both places at the same time. I can be where I'm at here and there at the same time.
Must have been exciting, though.
Yeah, very exciting. Yeah, very exciting.
When you got with Little Richard, were you using someone else's drum kit, or did someone buy you one, or did you? When did you sort of really get established with your own kit?
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned that. There's a guy by the name of Ken Berry, and there's a guy named Dolph Rimp, who I literally owe my life to, because they own a company called Studio Instrument Rentals, and they already had a place in New York, and they had one on Sunset Boulevard in Hollywood, and they had one in San Francisco at the time. I mean, now they're in Nashville and in London. Yeah, they're all over the world, everywhere. But at the time, I went in and I asked Ken if I said, listen, I don't have any credit and no one wants to give me a drum set unless I got credit. And it's hard to find people to want to, co-sign for me credit. And Ken looks at me and says, well, it makes you think I want to co-sign for you. And I was like, well, I said, you got all these drum sets. And I said, you got drum sets that's sitting up sitting up here that nobody's even using. I said, and just if you give me a chance, I said, I'd pay for it. And I just can't right now. I'm having a difficult time trying to get a drum set to go out on the road with and play. So he says, I'll tell you what, go over there. And he said, there's a bunch of drum sets there. Pick out a drum set you want. So I went over there and I looked. I said, okay, this looks pretty nice. And it was a Ludwig set. I thought this would be a pretty nice little set. And so Ken says, what do you think about that set? I said, I like it. He said, this is what you want. I said, yeah. He said, well, what about cymbals? He said, how are you going to have cymbals? And I was like, oh, yeah, I need those, huh? He says, what kind of cymbals do you like? Excuse me. Pasties, Zildjian. Well, at the time, I like pasties. But found out later on that Zildjian was a better cymbal for what my likings were. But yeah, I got a couple of hi-hats and about 3 different sizes of cymbals, and he says, I want you to pay. He said, pay $100 a month. He said, if you can pay me for 3 months, he says, I'll call the deal off. He said, if you don't, he said, I'm going to have those drums picked up. So I thought, wow, what a bargain. But at the time, I was kind of, I was knowing that there wouldn't be a problem to be able to pay them. So I had money coming in. So I paid the 3 months, and next thing I know, for a drum set that was worth at least probably $600 or $700 maybe, that I'd only paid about $300 for it. And yeah, he just gave them to me. So that was my first kit.
And how long was that about after you had played with Little Richard for the first time?
Maybe a year.
And how long did that kit last you?
Couple years. And then I ended up getting a set of Rogers custom made because I was with the Eric Burton band. And so Jerry Goldstein called Rogers and made some kind of deal through CBS to have them to make it was a custom ordered drum set. It wasn't custom made. It was just custom ordered the way that I wanted this, the configuration of the drums.
So Jerry
Yeah.
Goldstein, manager for War and all that. I understand you kind of passed it a chance to be part of that group, and then of course Eric Burden was part of it at first, and then he left, and then you connected with him. Can you kind of summarize how that went?
Well, there were some things going on at the time that Eric was putting together the band War, and I guess they had their original members, but Eric always liked me as a drummer and had asked me to be in the band. Jerry Goldstein had asked me to be in the band, and I didn't really want to be a part of a band. I always wanted to be an independent drummer. I like the idea of being able to work in the studio with Rick James and Smokey Robinson and Marvin Gaye, and play some with Billy Preston. But then, when you're tying me down to be in a band, I would be more exclusive with that band. And I wanted to be able to play with a lot more people than just one band at that time. And they would have made sure that I would have been exclusive because there's so much work, that I'd have to always be available for the band. And I wouldn't get a chance to play with any of the other artists. So I declined the opportunity. And I think obviously Harold Brown ended up being the drummer for that band, which was the guy that they wanted anyway. Initially, the rest of the members, because they were all one package, pretty much. I think they were called the Night Shift at some club. And Eric walked in and saw them on one of the night shifts and hired the whole band. So, but we all became very good friends. Harold Browns and I are very good friends. And when Eric left the band, Jerry Goldstein advised me that he wanted me to be in Eric's band and that Eric wanted me to play. So I took the gig.
Yeah, Harold Brown, great guy. He's been on the show. He was on with Lee Oscar and Howard Scott, and really enjoyed those guys. Were you surprised at all that War hit such massive success?
Not at all. They deserve it. And I'll tell you, they got a real hard worker, that Jerry Goldstein. Jerry's no joke. Jerry's a serious worker. He's very, and they had a partner named Steve Gold. Boy, I don't know if you know Steve Gold. When Steve Gold laughed, he'd have 5 different octaves. And he'd have this like going, and he would have the lower, all at the same time, 4 or 5 different octaves as he would laugh, and he was hilarious. But I think Steve Gold left a major position at Universal Pictures to become the manager for War, in partnership with Jerry Goldstein as a producer. And plus Jerry owned the publishing, Far Out Publishing, Far Out Music. So anyway, these guys really fought real hard to bring these guys to a certain place. Unfortunately, things happen the way they happen, and I don't know. I don't want to be the one to speak on it, but nobody's really happy with Goldstein. Not too much.
Yeah, it didn't work out well post 1970s for sure, unfortunately. But I heard you mention, in the people you were mentioning as early on, Rick James. Is that right? You played with Rick James years before he actually became successful.
Well, no, he had already become successful. But back in the day, he was known with the, what was it, Stone City Stone City Canyon Band or something like that. Stone City Canyon Band. Yeah. And Rick James was with that band. And they were doing some stuff on Motown. And at the time, I was doing some sessions with them. And then Rick had became a solo artist, and he was working with this girl named Tina Marie. And
Oh yeah. Okay.
and,
So
you know,
I thought you were referring to like in the early 70s or late 60s before he became famous. But yeah, so you worked with him after he became famous with Motown and all that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I
Okay.
did. I played drums on "I'm Just a Sucker for Your Love."
Great track. Yeah, I love that one. That was actually Tina Marie's first hit.
Yeah.
Yeah. But also you appeared, was it with Eric Burden that you appeared on Don Kirshner's rock concert in 1974?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I did a drum solo on a song called "The River of Blood," which was probably the highlight of that whole show.
How did you feel about being on TV? If you thought it was crazy having your hands through the radio, how did you feel about seeing yourself on TV?
Yeah, I loved it. I thought it was great. At the time, no drummer did what I did. And everybody was sort of nervous about it. But it wasn't because I had such a beautiful looking body that I chose to do it. I just decided that, hey, I am not going to sweat and get my clothes all wet and not have me dry clothes to put on, and I'm just going to take my shirt off when I drum. And boy, what did I do that for? I got girls attacking me on stage, running on stage, and I did on Don Kirshner Rock Concert. I did a drum solo on a song called "The River of Blood," and you could see that Don Kirshner Rock Concert in 1974 with Eric Burden, the River of Blood, the Eric Burden Band. You can Google it on YouTube; it's still on there today. And I'm actually doing a drum solo. I never ever seen a drummer do that before, and then all of a sudden it became the norm for drummers to do that now. It's like drummers do that now. It's like they see other drummers do it. They don't have any idea. And I really do believe that I was the original. I think I was the only one that had enough guts to actually do it. And because I had seen artists on stage before, and I don't remember who that I saw. I think it was the Detroit Wheels, Mitch Ryder.
Mitch Ryder, yeah.
And the Detroit Wheels. And I was like, no, he didn't do that. And I was like, okay, well, if he can do it, I can do it.
Devil with a red dress on? Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I ended up taking my shirt off, and then I thought, hey, the girls really like this, and some of the guys too, So why don't I just go ahead and dazzle them, But that wasn't the reason I was doing it. I was doing it because I felt comfortable, playing that way. It was a lot easier than having to sweat.
There's much more to this great Truth and Rhythm interview. Just continue on to the next part of the episode. Also, be sure to subscribe to this channel. If you've already done so, please share it with friends. And become a member by joining Truth and Rhythm on Patreon, or consider donating at funkinstuff.net. Thank you very much.